Now you're live. Ready?
Just a moment. Oh. Okay, we are live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Middleton Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. Let's start with roll
Roll
call.
call. Peniro,
Here.
Larman,
Here.
Krill,
Here.
all present.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh,
Make sure your speakers off. It is. Okay.
is it your microphone that's having a problem?
I don't have a microphone.
Okay.
Are we okay? Okay.
I didn't start my microphone.
I don't have a microphone.
I think that microphone is damaged, right? Didn't you say his microphone was?
Okay,
Okay, I'll just share.
here, speak up.
All right. Thanks much. Okay, approval of the minutes. I do not have any comments. Okay, we'll accept the minutes as submitted, Bill. Audit of the bills.
I do have 3 additions this evening. The first is for Baker Tilly in the amount of $13,992. That is for their work on the classification and compensation study and the city's single audit. The second is for Plant Morin, $26,200. That is for their work on the ERP needs assessment and RFP development. And then finally, there is the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. The amount is $27,074.38. And that is for the pass-through of sewer connection fees for the Allen Boulevard and Deming Way developments.
Okay, well, thank you.
This is Peniro. I move approval of the audit of the bills with the items Bill just added.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
This is Crow, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thanks. Presentation by Baker Tilly and the Compensation and Classification Study.
Yeah, so the city of Middleton did partner with Baker Tilly earlier this year to complete a compensation study, which is now done and the final report is ready. So we do have Sarah Town here with Baker Tilly on Zoom here to go over that report with you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to have some feedback. Well, as noted, my name is Sarah Town. I am a consulting manager with our classification and compensation team here at Baker Tilly, and excited to share the results of our comprehensive classification and compensation study for the city of Middleton. Tonight, I want to walk you through our complete methodology, what we've done and how we approached this study, our recommendations, and then answer any questions you may have as you're getting ready to make decisions about implementation. So feel free to stop me at any point in time throughout the presentation if you have any questions. But we work through
Just for a moment. Somebody has a microphone that is not muted somewhere, either on a laptop or another device.
Yeah, something's clucking like a chicken.
Okay, it's nobody in this room. All right, we'll figure it out. Proceed, please.
Sure, let me know if you can hear me just fine. So we worked through a 5-phase process with the city, started with data collection, understanding the goals of the study, your challenges when it comes to classification and compensation, and then a very large data request from the city. Using existing job descriptions and that data request, we moved into phase 2, which is position review or conducting job evaluation on the positions. While we were looking internally and comparing positions, we were also out to market in phase 3, looking outside of the organization in the relevant market space for positions as well. Using those 2 big bodies of data, the internal and the external data, we go into phase 4 of pay plan development, an analysis of your existing pay structure, our recommendations for adjustment, as well as then each of the positions' grade assignments. Tonight, we'll also talk about when we are looking at implementation and a couple of the different scenarios that we have proposed. And then we're now here in phase 5. We have a final report that is delivered. This final presentation serves as that kind of oral record for the final report. Final report just has a whole lot more data outlining our full methodology and being as transparent with this data-driven process as we can. The last parts that we have is making sure that the HR team and the project team have all of the tools they need to maintain the system moving forward. So I'm going to dive into each of these phases and walk through how we've done it. I mentioned we started with project initiation, understanding the goals of the project, why now is a good time for a classification and compensation study, getting some input from leadership in terms of a department head questionnaire, very large data collection effort, looking at your existing policy structure, policy handbook, job descriptions, organizational charts. And then we did conduct a virtual meeting for staff and leadership so they could understand the course of the study, what we would be looking at and what we would not be looking at. Using the existing job descriptions was the really big component of this data collection. The job descriptions form the basis of the study. And so using those job descriptions, and some of those were updated prior to our arrival of conducting this study, we moved into phase 2, or position review. We started by reviewing all of the position titles, making sure that the positions are appropriate and reflective of the work that they're doing. If you're a coordinator not coordinating anything, or an analyst not analyzing anything, we want to make sure that each of the positions has an appropriate title. From there, we conduct job evaluations. We have our own point factor tool here at Baker Tilly called SAFE, stands for Systematic Analysis and Factor Evaluation. It's a process that allows us to understand the unique components of each of the jobs and establish a hierarchy of those jobs within the organization. It's our process for comparing positions internally to each other. And it is a measurement of the position, not the person in the role. We use the same 9 compensable factors to evaluate all of the positions. What we're looking at is the minimum education and experience to fill the role, how complex or the level of difficulty of the job, who you're interacting with on a regular basis, the physical demands, the working conditions, or those environmental exposures, whether the position has autonomy and discretion to make decisions, was the impact of those decisions on the organization or the community at large, and then the type and scope of supervision exercise. The result of this process is a score for every single position. And again, that allows us to understand how positions relate to each other internally. SAFE is compliant and compatible with the Federal Equal Pay Act because we're measuring the position, not the person involved. This establishes internal equity, or looking at positions internally to each other. But once we completed that, we were then out to market. This is our market assessment, our phase 3, where we start by understanding who we should be comparing you to in the market, establishing a list of peer organizations who look like you, who work like you, are similar in size, similar in scope, similar in services offered. Those organizations may be geographically close to you, maybe just experiencing similar growth or economic concerns. We established this list by first initially asking department heads. We wanted leadership to weigh in on who they thought we should be comparing the city to. Once we had that list, we then narrowed it down, looking at economic and demographic indicators for this final list of 10 organizations. These 10 public peer organizations were then incorporated with our 3 published salary sources. I'll talk a little bit more about what that data looks like, but this is what's helping represent the private sector in this data. As we have positions that are in competition with private industry, we certainly included those in our results and our aggregate results as well. So in total, we took 31 positions, or about a third of the organization, in the benchmark as part of the market assessment. Market is just a temperature taking. It's just a snapshot in time, understanding what's occurring right now. And so we only need to take a sampling of those positions to market to be able to test and understand what those are. We evaluated a third of the positions. Some of those are new positions that haven't been previously evaluated. Some of those are career progressions. So we took just the first entry level role and we can kind of build from there. We looked at some positions that were hard to recruit, hard to retain. So those were included in the survey as benchmarks as well. And once we get this data back from the peer organizations, we're not just looking at titles for titles. We want to dive into those duties and responsibilities, really ensuring that it's a quality match, that there's a good overlap in the functions and duties of the job, that they're performing similar work. Even the minimum qualifications are somewhat similar. And we do make some adjustments to the data once it comes back. So we adjust for things like work week. If another organization is on a 37 5-hour work week, we want to make sure that those annualized rates are comparable. And then we also do an adjustment if it's not for the current fiscal year. And then we look at geographic cost of labor adjustment as well. I'll talk a little bit more about what that is, but it's an adjustment to the data that we make to standardize it for geographic differences. Most importantly, we don't weight the data. So no one peer is given preference over another. It's really this law of averages that we're working towards. What's the average market value for a position? So the city identified 10 public peer organizations to be included in the study. You can see those 10 outlined here. And then we were able to collect and compile data from 8 of those. Despite our relentless pursuit of data, we had 2 peers that were not able to provide us data at this time. But then we had those 3 published surveys as well. That's included to represent the private sector. Those come from Comp Analyst, Economic Research Institute, and Pay Factors. If you're not familiar with those robust data sets, I do want to let you know that they are explained a little bit more in detail in our final report, which is page 30 of your agenda packet tonight. But that's going to explain a little bit more about what that data is and how it comes to be. So, but in total, again, it's this law of averages that we're working on. We have a total of 11 possible matches for each of the organizations. That's excluding the 2 peers that we didn't get data from. I mentioned one of the adjustments that we make to the data. So something that we make adjustments for is something called cost of labor. Most folks are familiar with cost of living. It's the measurement of goods and services in a given geographic area. It's why egg prices go up or housing prices increase. So it's very tied to the economy. What we're looking at is cost of labor, which is the measurement of compensation being paid in a given geographic area. And there's certainly a premium put on places with a higher cost of living. It can influence that cost of labor, but this is really influenced by the supply and demand of labor. And so this data comes to us from the Economic Research Institute. They have a geographic assessor tool, which allows us to drill into a specific geographic area, in this case, Middleton, Wisconsin, and understand what is the cost of labor in your area at a given point in time. So you see that this chart here at the top, it's going to list the cost of labor for the city is 97.6. That's off of a scale of 100, the United States average being 100. So you're about 2.4% less than the United States national average for your cost of labor. We take that same indicator for each of the peer organizations. Many of them are having nearly identical cost of labor. They're all very geographically similar. And even standardizing that for our published data for the state of Wisconsin and your cost of labor are also very similar. You can see we're not adjusting the data up or down too much, not even a full percentage in some directions. But this is a way of allowing us to standardize that data and make sure that we're taking those geographic differences into account as we adjust that. This is usually where I get my first question. So I'll stop and say, how are we doing? Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, ready for the results then. So in the market assessment, we again took our 31 positions that were included as benchmarks. All of those had sufficient data, meaning they had more than 3 matches. We require a threshold of at least 3 matches to be able to calculate a market value. Kind of hard to say this is the market when we're only comparing you to 1 or 2 other peers. But thankfully, all of the data, all of the positions that we carried to market had more than 3 matches. And they actually had 6.6 matches on average, and a third of the data set actually had 8 or more matches. So again, the strength of this data set, the more matches we have, the more confident we are that that's the average or true market value for a position. We prepared a couple of different reports. Those are attachments in our final report looking at a range comparison where your complete range is in comparison to the market in terms of minimums, midpoints, and maximums, as well as the aggregate market data as well. But in total, once we looked at these 31 positions, on average, the city of Middleton is 5.2% above market at the minimum, 3% above market at the midpoint, and 0.1% above market at the maximum. So while these results are all showing that on average, we're about above market, we are more competitive at the minimums right now than we are at the maximums. What that's indicative of is making sure that we have starting salaries, that we can draw talent into the organization. Hiring doesn't seem to be too much of an issue for certain positions, but what may be challenging is retention, keeping people, and that's where we want to make sure that you're competitive across the full range. We're competitive at the minimums, but we're losing ground as we go up into the pay ranges, midpoints and maximums. And so this is something that we took into account as we wanted to make adjustments to your existing pay structure. And that's also not to say that all of the positions that we looked at were above market. There are some positions that are falling below or behind market and needing more of an adjustment. So this was just, again, an overall on average for the 31 positions that we included in the market. And I keep saying the market. I want to make sure that we all understand what I mean when I say the market. So we go out to these peer organizations and we're collecting that pay data of a starting salary and a maximum. And what that allows us to do is understand what is our compensation philosophy of where we want to position the city in relation to market. So that's really what that market data is for, is to be able to understand our compensation philosophy, whether we just want to try to match market or lead or lag. What is this data telling us? Using that information, we went into then phase 4. So phase 4, we started with an analysis of your existing pay structure and made adjustments to that. From there, we had to figure out where each of the positions go. That's what we call grade assignments, and we looked at all of the available data. We go line by line, position by position, looking at the internal and external data, the job evaluation, the market data. We test that relationship with a regression analysis to identify any outliers, but really understanding where each of the positions need to go. We did include department heads in a preliminary review of those grade assignments, so the results of our recommendations do include some of their feedback and input. It's very helpful, so thank you so much to your leadership for being engaged and providing us with that feedback. But up until this point of the study, I haven't been talking about the people in these roles at all. The goal of a classification and compensation study like this is to evaluate the positions, make sure that we have the right value for the position itself, regardless of who fills the role. But now once we get to implementation, we can start plugging people back into the conversation. Where are people's current salaries in relation to these new recommendations? And we did look at 4 different scenarios that we can use to adopt the new classification and compensation system moving forward. So I want to walk through each of these, starting with our structure. So this is what the city has currently, again, for all of our non-bargain positions. These are as a general pay plan. It's what we call an open pay plan, meaning it's open from minimum to maximum. There are no defined steps. Employee salaries fall somewhere between that minimum and that maximum. We have 21 unique grades, numbered 1 through 21, and a consistent range spread. Range spread is that distance from minimum to maximum, or that spread between the starting salary and the maximum of what somebody could earn as a base salary in that role. 30% consistent across the board. We also have a 6% consistent distance between each grade. That's what we call the midpoint differential, or the distance between each grade at the midpoint. And this is actually a really great structure in terms of its alignment to market and understanding where we already were. We knew that the results of the market assessment showed that you were across the board on average, being able to be competitive with market. We knew our minimums were competitive, but what we needed to take a look at was that all of the positions were competitive. So the starting minimum wage right now is $21.10 an hour. That's reflective of a $43,893 annual salary, or that grade 1 for the pay structure currently. And what we do typically see is some adjustments to the range spreads if we have positions that don't have enough distance and separation between supervisor, subordinate, or exempt, non-exempt positions. This 6% is allowing you to keep a very steady range spread across the board. So our proposal is not going to look a whole lot different. It's actually, the structure is quite good, especially in relationship to market. The proposed structure keeps the same open structure. It's still open, no steps. Between minimum and maximum is where employee salaries fall. It's still the same 21 grades. What we have shifted is this alignment to be 100% of market. So in an open range structure, the midpoint is key. That's our anchor to market. And if we try to align ourselves with a match market philosophy, as we've done here, we want the positions in these grades to align to the market. Market, meaning when somebody is fully proficient in the role, they can do all aspects of the job, they should be paid the market value of their position or somewhere near that midpoint. From there, the minimums and maximums simply expand and contract around that midpoint. So looking at where our midpoints needed to be aligned and then ensuring that we still have competitive minimums without reducing maximums, we kept with this 30% range spread from top to bottom. We also still have that same 6% differential between each of the grades. So in whole, there's not a lot of adjustments here to the overall structure. You've been doing a really great job of maintaining this structure, adjusting it annually to make sure that it's competitive in market, making sure that the positions are graded to the correct grades. So this starting new minimum wage for the city is going to be $21.32 an hour. That's reflective of a $44,348 annual starting salary. Where we make this determination, why we understand that the 30% is working well, why we didn't make any adjustments to the midpoints between grades, all of this information is run through a regression analysis. So that's what we're really understanding is our evaluation of the existing pay structure is to make sure that we align to market. So this makes me really happy. I'm a giant data nerd, so I'll talk to you about a good regression analysis all day long. But what this means is each one of these blue dots represents a benchmark position that we looked at in the market. So we have the job evaluation scores and the market data, and then a line of best fit, or that dark blue line in the middle through the data. That's what we call our market line. And then our goal as we're assessing the existing pay structure and making those adjustments is to make sure that we're aligning your structure to that market line. You can see it's running nearly parallel to that exact market line. That was our goal in this match market philosophy, ensuring that we're not reducing salaries, that we're making sure that each of the positions were market aligned. This is, again, what we use to make those adjustments to your existing pay structure and what told us that your existing structure is working quite well. But where we made the majority of our recommendations and changes was on the positions themselves. So again, we have to go line by line, position by position to understand where each of the positions needs to be in one of these 21 grades. So in total, 91 unique positions were classified to a grade in the proposed pay plan. We initially started that placement based off of the job evaluation or those SAFE scores I talked about using the job descriptions. But from there, we needed to make adjustments if we're accounting for things like where positions are currently graded or supervisor subordinate separation, where the market was telling us that this position needed to be. We even look at career progressions. If an entry-level position is moving up for market, it has what we call the accordion effect on the rest of the career progression. But as we're doing this process to evaluate the positions, we're not considering the person in the role, their performance, their length of service, even their existing salary. It's not about the individual people in these roles at all. Again, we want to make sure that we have evaluated the positions correctly and the positions are assigned the right value. Now we can then start plugging people back into the conversation and understand what they bring to the table as well. These grade assignments were reviewed again by leadership. We had some preliminary recommendations from them and then got some feedback as well to make some of our adjustments. So all of our recommendations of the grade placements are reflective of some leadership feedback as well. But then we get to implementation. So this is when we start now looking at individual people. We prepared 4 scenarios for the city to consider as you adopt the new classification and compensation plan. I do have some caveats for these scenarios. The first is that no employee will receive a pay decrease as a result of the study. It's not our goal. It's not in our compensation philosophy is to take money away from local government employees. So no one will receive a decrease in their existing pay. And then all of our calculations are reflective of base pay only. Things like benefits, pay differentials, any other supplemental pay policies or practices is considered separate. Our goal is we want to make sure that we get base pay right first. So we start by looking at an individual or an employee's existing salary and where it is in relation to these new ranges that we have proposed. So we looked at a total of 153 employees and vacant positions, and we have 37 of them that are below the new proposed minimum of their grade. We have 116 that are falling within them. So again, within that minimum to that maximum. And there are currently no employees that are above the maximum. So our implementation scenarios are going to be understanding where their existing salary is in relation to these new ranges. The first option one is just to address those 37 employees that are below the minimum to get them onto the pay structure. So that's the only adjustment that occurs. All other employees within the ranges would retain their existing salaries. This just represents the minimum action required to adopt the pay structure. We need everybody onto the pay structure. Next, we want to make sure that we are establishing a set percentage adjustment, usually budgeted with an existing general wage increase that we have already budgeted for. So option 2 looks at giving employees the greater of a move to the minimum or a set 2.5% adjustment. So that ensures that no eligible employee receives less than a 2.5% adjustment. So in a case where an employee's move to the minimum was only a 1% adjustment from their existing salary, they would instead get a full 2%. That establishes that everybody's at least receiving a minimum of a 2.5% adjustment. But if we've then moved everybody to the minimum or just increased everybody in the same percentage, we haven't really addressed any issues when it comes to compression yet. Compression is when we have new employees coming in right at the same starting point or even leapfrogging over more tenured employees. There's virtually no separation between employees in the exact same title, regardless of their time or years in the position. So option 3 is taking that into consideration. In addition to option 1, where we move employees to the minimum, we look at understanding where employees should be within these ranges. So employees would receive a 2.5% adjustment for each year in their position, capped at 6 years. And that's from the new proposed minimum. So that way, employees with more years in their position would move further through that range. We are looking at years in position, not years of service. That's important to note because you may have been with the city for 15 years, but made supervisor or manager last year. We want to move you appropriately through your managerial pay range. And so that's the option 3 is just accounting for some of that compression. Option 4 is similar to what you have currently, which is a compa ratio, but instead this is looking at what we call range penetration. How far somebody is currently within their existing pay range. And since we have not adjusted too much in terms of those same 30% ranges, we looked at a scenario that would keep employees at their existing range penetration. So if you're 32% of the way through your range currently, you would move to 32% of the range through the new range, even if that meant you have a completely new, different job grade assignment and a new different grade. So I want to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of these scenarios, and then I'm happy to answer any questions when it comes to the overall philosophy. But pay compression is really the key component here. And so while we have done a really good job of adjusting the pay structures annually to keep pace with market, the movement of employees or the workforce analysis that we did on range penetration had a wide variety of results. It shows that there's just very narrow pay differentials between employees, regardless of their experience or tenure within the organization. So in this chart, we have the number of years in the position, going from 0 all the way up to 25 years in the role, and then that how far into the range they are. So 0% would be starting at the minimum, 50% would be at that midpoint, all the way up to 100%, which is that maximum. And we have some employees that have more than 8, 10, 15 years of experience that are not even to the midpoint yet. I'm going to assume that somebody that has been in their role for 10, 15, even 20 years is fully proficient in their role. So they should be near the midpoint, ideally. But we also have some employees that have less years of experience that are already very far through the range as well. The average time in position or the average years in position across the workforce is just 5 years right now. Yet we have some employees that are already approaching their maximum. So option 3 really alleviates some of this compression by doing a recalibration of the existing workforce relative to their time in position. We look at 2.5% adjustment for each year that they've been in their role, capped at that 6 years. again, from the new proposed minimum. Any employee whose salary would exceed that calculation, they would retain their existing salary. They're already appropriately through that range, but it's really about accounting for that time and position. Again, we kind of see just based off of the time and how far they're into that range, it steadily increases, but we got a wide variety across the workforce currently. So I'll pause again and open it up. Does anybody have any questions about our implementation options?
I just had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do we have a 37.5-hour work week or no?
No, you have a 40-hour work week, but if a peer organization has a 37.5-hour work week, we made adjustments in the market data to account for that. We want to make sure that those annualized rates are comparable. So we're adjusting for work week.
Okay, thank you. And do we know how much it will cost to bring those 37 employees who are currently below the minimum up to the minimum?
Yes. So in our final report, one of the last attachments, our attachment 4, is the results of our costing analysis. I believe this is in page 45 of your agenda packet for tonight. But that's going to break down each of the 4 scenarios as well as the total cost for those.
Yeah, and I would just add to that this information in the report is the information that the consultants provided. This is looking at wages, not wage-related benefits like WRS and FICA, and this is citywide. We'll have additional information as part of the proposed budget that breaks that information down by funds and with those other benefits. So I think the intent tonight was to focus on the bigger picture of the report with the intent that we would have follow-up meetings when we get into more specific numbers for budget purposes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'll just wrap up very quickly, which is our last phase on project completion. We do have that final report, which documents our full methodology used to conduct the study, our findings, our recommendations. We do plan on rolling this out to employees at some point, so we'll make sure that the employees and leadership have this information as well. And then important for Casey and the HR team is to make sure that they have the training that they need to maintain the system moving forward. And that includes the entire safe job evaluation process. A bit of our timeline. So we were right on schedule with this. This is something that we're wanted to note is that we started this initial engagement back in March. We were out to market and doing our job evaluation in April and May. And then over the course of the summer, getting feedback on those grade assignments and adjusting your pay structure. And then wrapped everything up with our final report in August. So our final recommendations, just as a broad summary, is to continue the use of Baker Tilly's SAFE methodology for understanding internal equity. It's going to make sure that you're compliant with the Federal Equal Pay Act by evaluating the positions, not the people in the roles, and then approving the proposed 21 grade general pay plan for our non-bargain, non-union positions that has been recalibrated to be market competitive. Approve the position grade assignments that have been established with consideration of all of the available data that we use to evaluate the study. And then they also had that input from the project team and department leadership. And then work with administration to select an implementation scenario that's really going to address your compensation philosophy, your business goals, one that is fiscally attainable and sustainable. Our goal in this process was to not provide you with a pay structure that can't be maintained. Your system has worked well in terms of your existing pay policies to adjust the structure, but to maintain equity over time and to make sure that employees are advancing through those ranges, we do recommend just taking a look at your existing policies for how adjustments to salaries occur year over year. And then the last part of our recommendations is recommendations we make to every organization that engages in a full comprehensive classification compensation study. And that's just to maintain efforts like these. Routinely review positions, update your job descriptions, keep tabs on market conditions to make sure that you're being competitive, find those appropriate peer comparators, adjust the salaries and structure on an annual basis so you're able to keep up with this match market philosophy. And then commit to advancing employees through their pay ranges that is really based off of time and position, a combination of other factors that are really advancing employees to that midpoint and beyond. it's going to extend the life of your pay structure to be able to do this. But I'm very happy with we are able to provide you with a solid foundation from which you can now continue to grow. And I'm happy to answer any questions that we have. I will share my contact information. Again, my name is Sarah Town, and I have Anna Yen online as well, who's one of our lead consultants, engaging in the analysis. And then I believe on the call as well is Jada Kent, who is our managing director and practice leader of the compensation classification team here at Baker Tilly.
And just wanted to make a brief time note, we are down to about 25 minutes remaining in the meeting. So perhaps in the interest of time, unless there's an immediate pressing question, if you have any follow-up questions, you can write those to Casey or me. We can work with the consultants and make those get answered. And then again, we'll have more information as we get into the budget meetings.
Do you need any kind of motion for tonight, or the staff recommendation is just something we'll come back to?
I don't think there's any action needed tonight. This was really just a presentation. I think in the proposed budget, they'll include funding for some of the options, and then that can be discussed as part of the budget process.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Resolutions.
Thank you.
2025-45, accepting the quitclaim deed for outlot number 2, plat of Pheasant Branch Ridge.
Hanairo and I enthusiastically move to recommend that council approve resolution 2025-45.
Right,
This is Crow, I'll second.
right. Questions, discussion?
No, I'll save
Right.
discussion for when council considers.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Agreements and contracts. It's a reservation agreement with Holy Cross for the facility use for the elections for 2026, 2027.
This is Hanairo. I move to recommend the council approve the reservation agreement with Holy Cross for facility use for elections for 2026 and 2027.
Righty, second that. Any questions, discussion?
I just had a comment, the second whereas clause on page 50 of the packet, I think consistent should be consistently. Or taken out, just a suggestion, it's minor.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
In favor of the reservation
Yes,
agreement? Yes.
reservation agreement.
Okay.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks. Next, annual review agreement with Group Health Cooperative, GHC. This is a fiscal impact of $2,402,260. Total estimate premium cost for the 2026 year. The city is still in its fiscal year with GHC and has received the renewal packet. The proposed renewal includes a 7.9% rate increase with no changes to the current plan.
This is Hanairo. I move to recommend that council approve the annual renewal agreement with Group Health Cooperative.
All right, do we have a second?
This is Crow, I'll second.
Any questions for the staff or discussion? I just have
Aye.
one, and that's really about it. Is this increase consistent with what's been agreed upon or discussed previously?
Yes, it is. So when we went to GHC, that included rate caps. And this is at that 7.9% rate cap that we had for this year. There's only limited experience with just a partial year of data. So there's not enough positive evidence to argue for or try to achieve a reduction from where that rate cap
Sure,
is, but
understood.
that's something we'll be monitoring in future years.
Okay, any other questions?
I just wonder how the staff liked the different insurance.
I've heard a lot, so I'm assuming that no news is good news for the most part. There was one employee concerned with access to a specialty provider that we are currently working through.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All those in favor of the annual renewal agreement with GHC, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Moving on, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Carbon Reduction Program Grant Agreement with the City of Middleton. And I know this is ongoing, so this is, let me just get it right here and then discuss. Okay, so this would be, oops, sorry. On the wrong page, excuse me.
Well, in the meantime, I will move to recommend the council approve the
Thank you.
WISTOT Carbon Reduction Program Grant Agreement with the City of Middleton.
Okay, Norman will second that. Any questions, discussion?
I just wanted to confirm that the previous grant funded work that's going on this year, and this grant will fund work in 2026. Is that correct? Okay, that is correct. And who will actually be doing the work? Our Public Works staff or?
It'll be me in planning and Tom Weber in Public Works.
Okay, Tom Weber, and as this project is being conducted, I don't know if there will be any impacts on pedestrian walkways, but if there will be, please make sure to accommodate those users, whether they're on cars or foot or mobility devices or bikes. That's all. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay. All those in favor of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Carbon Reduction Grant Program Agreement with the amounting match of $33,360, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Right. Next, acceptance of scope of work for EMS Chief Recruitment Services by McMahon Associates Incorporated, not to exceed $25,000. Do I have a motion?
This is Haniro. I move to recommend that council authorize staff to proceed with a contract with McMahon Associates for EMS chief recruitment for not to exceed amount of $25,000.
All righty, Lauren will second that. Any questions for staff? Any discussion?
I just wondered, who will sit on this search committee? Will anybody from finance and personnel be on there?
To be determined, but we can definitely have a member involved in some way, shape, or form. Once we engage the contract with McMahon, I'll talk with them about what they've seen as best practices in terms of different interviewing panels. So yes, the finance committee will be involved
Okay.
in one way, shape, or another.
And then how, if at all, will our current EMS employees be involved?
That's another item I'll talk with them about. Likely, we'll have them appoint a representative from the department to sit on one of the panels to be participate. But I'll confirm with McMahon on what they see as best practice.
Thank you. And then finally, on page 90, it talks about an optional assessment center process. We are not opting for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that and talked to some folks in the profession about that. It's something that some departments have used it. I don't get a sense that there's a lot of, for lack of better phrasing, benefit that you get from it that you wouldn't get from the normal interview process. If for some reason, as we get into the recruitment, there becomes a burning need to have that added, I'll come back and discuss it with the finance committee. But as of now, I think at least I'm comfortable moving forward with the proposal just for the base amount.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Okay. All those in favor of the acceptance of scope of work for the EMS Chief Recruitment Service by McMahon, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Next, the battery storage at Police Department project termination.
This is Haniro. I will move to direct staff to terminate the project and seek reimbursement from the Public Service Commission's Energy Innovation Grant Award for work done to date by HGA Engineering and Eagle Point Solar.
Right. Second on that?
I can second that.
Okay, great. Any discussion or questions for staff?
I just want to confirm it's $43,368 in expenditures that we're seeking reimbursement for.
That amount for sure, but then there may be additional fees that gets worked out with Eagle Point Solar for some design work and consulting that they did trying to meet the challenges of the project.
Okay. And then I just wanted to comment that I'm disappointed, but I understand. I appreciate that lessons learned are offered in the final report, and I encourage you to hold on to those so we can implement them in the future. I know Sun Prairie's library will be the first community resilience center of its kind in Wisconsin, and maybe we can do the same when we undertake our campus project. So something to think about in the future. And thanks for all your work on this, Kelly.
Are there any, I guess I had a question too. Are there any concerns that the money won't, that we won't get any part of the payment or?
Well, I did have a meeting with the PSC about this. I've had several, and we briefly talked about reimbursement, and they said they would look at reimbursement with documentation that we have for invoices, and we've been doing quarterly reports always on time, so they have followed this project really closely. They understand the challenges, and they said they would work with us on reimbursement for the work done to date, but they would need, first direction from council before they would really enter into those discussions.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all those in favor of the storage, battery storage at the police department project termination, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on, authorization to issue a request for proposal for an enterprise resource plan ERP system.
This is an I move to recommend that council authorize the issuance of the RFP package for the ERP project and approve the proposed vendor evaluation and selection process.
Right, Norman will second that. Any questions for Bill? Discussion?
Again, I wonder who's on the city evaluation committee? And who's the city's project manager for this? Is
I've been taking the lead as project manager on this project. Others involved in the project management teams are Casey Radke and Drew Montour. The staff evaluation committee includes the three of us, as well as Lori, city clerk, who is the payroll lead, and Sarah Wild, utility billing manager, who's the utility billing lead. And then the technical advisory group that will be working with the evaluation committee also includes representatives from some of the key or larger departments. So we have representative from police, from EMS, from public works, city administrator, and I believe there's at least one other one that I'm forgetting at the moment, but try to reach out to some of the larger departments. Other departments, even if they're not on the formal committee, will be invited to send a representative to the demos and participate and provide feedback.
okay. And then refresh my memory. Did we earmark funding for this, the actual system in 2025, or are we just planning to in 26?
We do have funds earmarked both in 2025 as well as some carryover funds originally from 2024. So based on the funds we have allocated, we are hoping that that is sufficient, but we're also, if as we go through the process, if there's additional funding, we're hoping to have that information before we finalize the 2026 budget.
That was my next question. Okay, great. And then how long until implementation? Like, when will it be up and running and?
Can't really give a definitive answer yet because it depends on the firm that we select and our negotiations with that vendor. The timeline that we're operating under for the RFP is that we would be issuing that, getting proposals back in October. Our goal is to have a vendor selected by end of this year. Then we would be doing contract negotiations in January and working with them on putting together an implementation timeline. I would say generally implementations for a project of this scope are 12 to 18 months. So it will be some time yet, but we're excited to make this major milestone and then try to keep pushing forward as soon as we can.
Okay, and then finally, do we need to include our equal benefits requirement in this agreement or no?
Matt, was that something you
Yes, that
discussed as
was-
part of the terms and conditions?
Yes, it was in the draft that, I mean, her name now, it's escaping. It's, yeah, got sent back to me, it included that in just the
Okay.
draft contract language,
So it is in there. Great.
or will be in it.
One more question, Bill. Was there any talk about integrating a purchasing system into this?
Purchasing is definitely something that we're going to be looking at and evaluating. The RFP is structured where there's kind of core functions and then there's additional optional pieces. So at a base level, a core of purchasing, of being able to do requisitions through purchase orders, through AP, and then rolling into setting up assets would be part of the core. Advanced purchasing features and procurement features would be things we would evaluate. So it's certainly something we'll look at as we get the vendor responses back.
Okay, thanks.
Typically, those types of modules are far more complicated and expensive because you're trying to set up call it kind of a B2B, a business to business exchange of information that requires things like APIs, which are application programming interfaces, which require IT staff who have skills to actually be able to write and create those modules. I think Middleton might be a little small for something like that. But like you said, the core module, has a provision where internally we say we're going to issue a requisition to make a purchase. Now we have an electronic document for record keeping purposes, but then the handoff to work with the vendor is still a more traditional process.
Yeah, I feel like the core functions that we've identified in the draft RFP would be a significant enhancement from where we
Yeah,
are today.
exactly.
And how
Yeah.
far we can go with it and timeline for that, that's part of the discussions that we'll
Because,
have
at
with
least
the
you're
vendors.
starting your accounting with the issue of a purchase of something,
Mhm.
as opposed to an actual electronic business transfer of that and then a handoff.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have to vote on this. All those in favor, authorization to issue a request for proposal for an enterprise resource planning system, please say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right. Billy, I guess you'd like to look at a time, September 30th, to start a meeting.
Yeah, with the budget timeline, we were anticipating that meeting on the 30th being the night when the departments come to present their budgets briefly and answer questions. And then the 2 regular meetings in October would be for budget discussions and deliberations. I looked back at last year, we started the meeting with the department presentations at 5:30 and we wrapped up just after 9 o'clock. Probably looking at a similar amount of time if we want to do that all in one meeting. So if there is opportunity to start a little earlier, that'd be appreciated. If you want to look at other options, we can certainly do that. But at this point, I think we'd like to set a start time so we can start working on a schedule for departments to come in.
Sure, I'm fine with 5:30 then. 30th. That
Aye.
works.
I'm thinking maybe we want to go a little earlier since didn't we go to 9? Did you say 9:30 or 9?
Yeah, so last year we started at 5:30, we ended shortly after 9. So it was, approximately 3.5 hours. If there's the flexibility to start a little earlier, I think that would be appreciated by staff to not have as late of an evening, but
Yep.
we will do what directed.
I'm available whenever.
And I could be available too. I could even do 4:30, but I know that
Yeah,
that can be hard.
Yeah, earlier is a real push, and I think if you haven't figured out, I push very hard to keep our meetings moving along. Not that I don't want people to ask questions and talk, but I just want us to, burn through things, let people do their presentation and move on. And that half hour makes a pretty big difference in my life in terms of
Would
work schedule. So I don't mind working late.
would
Okay.
5 o'clock be good? Because with respect, when I chaired tried to move through as efficiently as possible. And this is, the budget meeting is this committee's most important meeting, I feel, because we're engaging with the staff, with the directors of the departments and finding out what their needs and wants are. I don't want to, I want people to be respectful of our time too, and not give a 30-minute presentation if they're scheduled for 10. But at the same time, I think we owe them the opportunity to answer our questions.
I agree. It's, I mean, if we think a half hour is gonna make it all the difference in the world, then I'm okay for 5 o'clock, but I will press very hard during the meeting and during the presentations to keep it moving along. And I will ask staff to be concise and keep their presentations to the time that's allotted.
Yeah, it's really up to the committee. We will do whatever you decide. Regardless of the start time, we'll try to put a tight schedule together and encourage departments to stick to that schedule.
Do you need a motion?
I think direction, however you want to provide that.
All right.
If we did vote, I would vote for 5 as our start time.
Gather that. You're even more flexible. days.
Well, I can be flexible, so
Yeah.
I have work too, and
Yep.
I'd have to figure out dinner, but if you don't mind me eating here.
No, for me, it's all about day job work, so,
Yeah.
and just being able to get out. and
Can
get-
you make 5 o'clock?
I will.
Okay, 5 o'clock? All right, thank you.
With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you, Bella.
Thank you.